BBC Radio Stoke, level 42, and lessons in love. We've been talking about whether the government should be doing more to help ceramics companies across the UK, but obviously when you talk about ceramics, you have to think Stoke, don't you? They're stepping in, this is the government stepping in to help the steel industry with the site at Scunthorpe, British Steel, effectively being nationalised, as in the government is going to run it and pay for it for a bit. So this morning we've been wondering whether the government should step in to help the ceramics industry. It's no secret that it's been in decline for years. 1968, 62,000 people worked in the pottery industry in Stoke-on-Trent. It's now closer to 7,000 according to The Spectator, which is a sort of magazine, newspaper, website thing. In recent months, we've seen Royal Stafford going into administration. Steelite have just made over 30 people redundant, and the government has been called upon to assist in some way. Rob Flello is Chief Executive at Ceramics UK, which is the industry body which has launched the UK Ceramics Rescue Plan. They did this last month to address the impact of challenges like rising energy costs and cheap imports. And Mr. Flello joins us this morning. Good morning. Thanks for coming on to talk about this. I want to talk to you about steel, first of all. What do you make of the government's intervention there, and does that have any bearing at all on ceramics?
Well, yes is the short answer to the last bit of the question, but I'm delighted for the workers at Scunthorpe. I think it's really positive for them. It's also really positive for the ceramic refractory manufacturers, because you can't make steel without ceramic refractories. So I'm really pleased as well for any of our members that manufacture the refractories that enable the steel at Scunthorpe to be made. They will keep in the job as well.
You say it's a yes for potential implications for ceramics in that regard then, but what about more broadly, seeing the government intervening in the way they have with steel? I know that you at Ceramics UK and many others have been saying there are ways government could help ceramics if it felt so minded.
Well, indeed, and part of the ceramic plan that you referenced there is about saying to government, stop punishing UK manufacturers, UK industry. Cheap imports from China, where they're still building coal-fired power stations, they use coal in manufacturing. The UK ceramic industry has done amazing, fantastic work. I mean, over the last decade alone, it's spent about £750 million of its own money decarbonising. But we've got to the point where, really, the industry can't go much further without government stepping up and providing support, whether that's allowing those parts of the industry that can electrify to be able to actually physically connect to the grid and to have power when they switch it on, and indeed the massive cost of replacing gas-fired kilns with electric ones where that's possible. In other areas where the industry needs help and support, perhaps to switch to hydrogen, but the problem is that government, really successive governments, to be fair, have just hammered UK industry and particularly UK ceramics industry with things like carbon taxes and a whole raft of other taxes that these cheap imports just don't have to worry about.
Why do you think ceramics particularly has been, to use your words, hammered by governments of different persuasions and colours over the years?
Well, I think part of it is a failure to understand that ceramics, I love our local here. I live in Stoke-on-Trent myself. I love our local pottery industry. I love our tableware, our giftware. We produce amazing stuff, best in the world. But ceramics, of course, is so much more. It's clay brick, clay roof tile. It's the technical ceramics. I know there's talk about ceramics isn't an issue for defence. Steel is. Well, actually, ceramics is an issue for defence, because ceramics also goes into IT equipment. Ceramics is essential for the defence and aerospace industries. For example, you can't make jet engine turbine blades without ceramic cores. Ceramic armour, the whole host of things that ceramics goes into, that I'm afraid successive governments just haven't been particularly cited on, or if they have, they've ignored it. So we've got an industry that is literally everything you touch at some point has been involved with ceramics. Glass you can't make, for example, without ceramics either. So everything you touch has some link to ceramics, and yet successive governments have thought it was fine just to let the industry suffer, as I say, with high carbon taxes, high fuel prices. And I think, again, some of it is the government seem to think that we are an electro-intensive industry, whereas actually we're a gas-intensive industry in the main. And none of the support and help that's gone to electro-intensive manufacturers has come our way.
Well, you've seen this from both sides. Of course, many listeners will remember your time as the Labour MP in Stoke South. So you know how Parliament works. You know what goes on down there. How hard is it to get governments to listen to these kind of things? Because obviously around here we'd like people to be banging the drum for ceramics, but other parts of the country have got other industries too, and I'm sure they're all banging different drums, aren't they?
Well, they are. I mean, yeah, just unpicking that a little bit. I mean, in my time as an MP, one of the things I was particularly pleased and proud about is that I was part of the team that went to the then ministers and got tariffs imposed on Chinese imports into the UK in the gift and tableware area, and those tariffs are still with us now. So that was a positive. I think in terms of the wider UK, I mean, we have UK ceramic manufacturers in 150 plus sites across the whole of the country, from Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, and throughout all areas of England. So the whole of the UK has got some manufacturing somewhere within it, and we do a lot of work lobbying existing MPs. And I have to give a shout out to Gareth Snell and the local MPs here, who have been really leading the charge again to make sure that the industry is supported. And to be fair, the previous MPs in the area also really stood up for it. But it needs something much more fundamental, I'm afraid, at the heart of government. And I'm afraid what it needs is Ed Miliband to stop trying to destroy UK manufacturing and stop appeasing the Chinese, and actually really change the net zero dialogue to stop trying to get the impossible, to actually understand what the industry is, support the industry whilst it continues on its decarbonisation journey, and make sure that in the meantime our businesses don't get put out of business by unrealistic targets and allowing a flood of cheap imports, which could get worse with the tariffs in the US situation.
Are you suggesting there that the notion of net zero and decarbonising the economy at the rate that the government wants to shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how you fire ceramics?
I'm afraid it does, and we are having and have had this argument, continue to have this argument with government that to assume that somehow solar panels and wind turbines will be able to fire a kiln firing at 1200 degrees, for example, is just is not realistic. Maybe in 5-10 years' time, if the industry, which is a really strong and good industry, but you do wonder how many knocks it can take. It needs supporting through the transition period, not punishing through the transition period.
The point came from a listener earlier about money, and we can't keep subsidising every industry, because every industry would probably benefit from more money coming into it. So there are other ways, I guess, that government could be offering better support here that maybe doesn't cost a fortune. Things like tightening up on fake ceramics coming in, the designs that are coming in that look very much like, in terms of tableware, a spotty design. Well, you think Emma Bridgewater straight away, but you can buy an Emma Bridgewater cup for what, 20 odd quid from the factory here, or you can buy one for like £1.50 somewhere else that looks similar enough, some might argue, and that's coming probably from the Far East. Do we need to be doing more about that?
I think it's certainly an issue, but I think coming back to the point about government subsidising the industry, at the moment it's the other way around, that the ceramics industry is certainly subsidising other electro-intensive industries, because the way that a lot of these subsidies work is that the way a lot of these industries work is that the industries themselves cross-subsidise each other.
You're right there. Do you want to take a minute? We'll play a song and come back to you. Would that help? I think we'll do that, and we'll come back to Rob Flello in a second. And we're joined by Rob Flello on BBC Radio Stoke, talking about the ceramics industry. Rob's Chief Executive of Ceramics UK. I don't know what it is you're drinking there, Rob, but it seems to go down the wrong way you're right now.
Indeed, yeah. It was having a sip of coffee in between answers from a lovely, beautiful, locally produced coffee cup.
Well, I'm glad you're back with us now. I just want to talk briefly while I've got you about tariffs. And we're seeing what's going on in America. Is there anything you'd want to see from the UK government regarding ceramics and tariffs?
Well, yes, is the short answer. I think the situation with tariffs, I mean, one thing to bear in mind is that the UK tableware manufacturers have been suffering 25% tariffs into the US for years, even though the US has no real domestic tableware manufacturing capacity. Again, successive governments have not taken the argument to Washington to say, why are you penalising UK manufacturers producing fantastic tableware and sending it into the US, even though they can't produce it themselves? So, you know, we've already been at a disadvantage, and this extra 10% heaps more pain on that. And again, the bizarre thing is that if you're a Chinese manufacturer selling into the US, you've again had that unfair disadvantage. Unfair advantage, disadvantage in UK manufacturers. What the UK government, I think, should be doing is building on the work that I did as an MP with colleagues and getting tariffs placed on Chinese goods dumped into the UK. I think it really needs to have a much more proactive look at those. There's something called the Trade Remedies Authority, but I think it tries to be it tries to sort of be fair to all people, and rather than actually trying to protect and support UK manufacturers, it tries to take this sort of separate stance where it just looks at everything as fairly as it can. Well, it's very hard to see how it can look fairly at countries that are very happily sending product into the UK, when, as I've said, they don't have to worry about our energy prices because they're quite happily using fossil fuels. They don't have carbon taxes. They don't have the same levels of health and safety, which we quite rightly do in this country. So all of those factors don't tend to get looked at, and I think it's about time a UK government actually started to look at the wider picture and said, if you're going to send goods into the UK and put British workers out of a job, then the very least they should do is abide by the same rules that we have to.
Interesting stuff. Thanks very much for your time this morning. We'll catch up with you soon. Rob Flello, Chief Executive of Ceramics UK, with us on BBC Radio Stoke. Your reaction to what Mr. Flello was saying? 0800 121 8080.